Peace, everybody. Carol here with Aspergers versus Neurotypicals. And today I'm going to talk about some thoughts that I've been having about being happy. Have you ever heard the phrase that happiness is a choice, or that a person is about as happy as they make up their mind to be? Well, I have heard those, and I never really believed it because I tried to choose to be happy, but life circumstances would always seem to make it impossible to be happy. Like, there's one thing that I don't think I'll ever resolve, and that is if you have like something like a migraine, there's probably no way you can be happy. All you can do is accept the pain, but don't make it worse by worrying about it. You know, that's really the only thing that I can think to do. But just in terms of everyday life and the ups and downs of our circumstances, the people we have to surround ourselves with that maybe we would rather not be around those people. For example, a boss or a coworker or something like that, or maybe a family member that's having trouble and they're putting their negative energy on you. You know, these types of things. They happen to all of us, and there's just not any way to escape those. And even if you lived alone out in the woods, there might be storms or famine or something, or bugs, and that might make you upset. So do you think that maybe we're born with a permanent set point that makes you happy or not happy or neutral? Some researchers claim that this is the case, and I'll just say right now that that may be partially true, but I believe wholeheartedly that you can change your set point. These researchers claim they interviewed a lot of people that won the lottery, and they found out that yes, while they were extremely happy after they won the lottery, they found that 1 to 2 years later they would always go back to their original set point. And this isn't really proof that your set point is permanent. It's just a phenomenon, in my assertion, that most people don't change their set point. They don't take the effort to change their set point. But in the field of happiness psychology, they're finding that you really can change the set point. And I just wanted to kind of summarize some of my notes in happiness psychology and the main points that I remember from it, and share that with you, and maybe you can do your own research and see if you could change your set point. I find that a lot of Aspergers have a set point that's lower than normal not only because of their past traumas and being bullied, or maybe a harsh parenting, or being born in a world where you have a different neurotype is going to cause anybody to have a low set point, because you just sort of expect the worst and you tend to not trust people as much and so forth. Not you, but just in general, of course. I'm speaking for myself only. So as I said, there's an emerging and very reputable field of research called happiness psychology. And these people claim that your set point is indeed changeable, and then they proceed in their classes, happiness psychology classes, to show you how to change your set point. And there's some, I don't know if that's the case anymore, but I've taken some free happiness psychology classes where they offer two or three classes a week and exercises that you do. And it's rather, you have to put quite a bit of energy into the class. And I'm thinking that it was about 6 weeks, maybe it was 6 to 8 weeks. There could have been like 12 to 16 class modules. And in each class you focus on a certain area in your life, and you learn how to re-engineer your thoughts surrounding that. And just as an example, one of them was focusing on gratitude and looking for things to be thankful for. And one of the things, like if I had to be asked one thing that I remember from that class, it's something that I still do to this day when I remember, and I really want to remember to do this every evening. And actually, I would like to add doing it every morning as well, and maybe even 4 times a day. And that is, think of, this is their exercise, and you can probably be creative and change it, but 3 things, good things that happened today. So you would do this at the end of the day. 3 good things that happened today that you were responsible for, or at least partially responsible for. And you know, it was actually kind of difficult at first because I was going through some hard times. I had a really difficult job and I was separated from my family and stuff because of financial obligations. And I actually started to learn how to see a glass that was half full instead of half empty by doing this exercise. It only took like 5 minutes every evening. And I started out by writing things down, and then I started just doing it in my mind. Like, so you might say, well, let's see, one good thing that happened today was, and if you're really having a bad day, you could say, is I actually got out of bed. Wow, that's could be worse, right? I mean, I could have just not gotten out of bed. Really, there's people that are so depressed that they can't even get out of bed in the morning. And so I guess they lose their job, you know, because they don't show up. And so I was really happy that I got out of bed and that I always am able to get out of bed. I mean, that's like I'm really thankful for that. And I didn't really think about being thankful for that before. And then I'll think of more things, you know, like something that happened at work that was because of me. And I guess the theory behind it is you're not only looking for good things that happened when normally you wouldn't. You're training yourself to look for good things as opposed to we're always so trained to look for bad things. Like look at the news, right? And in engineering, you're always trained to look at the problem, right? I mean, I know that's for me. Always trained to look for the problem. So when I start looking almost like a treasure hunt for good things that happened, it really does change your outlook. And I was going to say something about that. What was it? When I started doing the exercise, well, it started making me more neutral at first, not so negative and pessimistic. And then I started kind of developing the habit of, wow, it's like a treasure hunt to try to find something good in a situation. And then it started to kind of become a game. So, you know, you can try it for yourself and see if at the end of the day, if you can find 3 things that you're thankful for. Oh, I know what it was that I was going to say. So if you want to personalize it. Now, sometimes in the Buddhist philosophy, you spend all your time trying to depersonalize things and get egoless. But in this case, you want to personalize it because what happiness psychology has found, and I believe happiness psychology is kind of a step above Buddhism. That's more useful for today's technology. Plus, it has a lot more knowledge to pull from. That when you think of something good that happened, and you can apply it to yourself and think of something that you did to cause that, it gives you sort of a self-confidence about yourself and a sense of power and control that we have in the universe. And in happiness psychology, they found that a sense of power and control is very, very strongly related to happiness. And Robert Sapolsky, he's a professor at Stanford, and he teaches classes on stress in the brain, and he's like an expert on depression and how primates interact and their tribes, and then how to compare that to humans, and there's a lot of similarities. And regarding depression, he has taught in his class that it's known now that the more power and control we have in the world, the happier we are, because he started with looking at primates and then looking at humans as well and seeing the similarities. And he noticed that, for example, in primates, when you have primates that are high up on the totem pole, as long as they're not constantly fighting for their position, but they're higher up on the totem pole, in terms of hierarchy, they are the happiest apes, and how that's defined as the lowest level of stress hormones in their blood. So that would correlate with a longer life, because if you have a lot of chronic stress hormones in your blood, like cortisol and adrenaline and blah, 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 all those fancy names of stress hormones in your body, if you have a lot of those and it's chronic, you know, that causes neurodegenerative diseases and basically a lot of diseases in your body. Some people think that that's the sole cause of disease, but it's not really the sole cause, but it's a cause of the majority of diseases, is stress and what we think in our mind. So if we can develop a sense of inner power, even if we're not high on the totem pole in our jobs, but just a sense of that you matter, that you that what you did and your thoughts and your decisions and your actions actually caused that good thing to happen, then that helps you become a happier person. Because it's kind of like showing you, it helps you see that you are a worthy, powerful person that makes a difference and makes good things happen. So part of it is training your mind to see these things. Anyway, that's the one thing that I remember from the class that I can just say right now. But going on with my notes, what we want to do is train our mind to see that our current situation is, I'm going to say, a glass half full instead of a glass half empty. Because we want to see that the universe is benevolent and even helpful, and that the universe is actually a perfect universe for us and for our growth. If you can develop a habit of engineering your thoughts, they're still true thoughts, but the way you group your thoughts together and you spend a little bit of time each day cultivating these skills of grouping your thoughts together to give a view of a glass half full instead of half empty, you're going to interpret the world as a better and more benevolent place for you to live in, and that'll make you happier and you'll be more optimistic. So when you first start doing these exercises, you don't really have to worry about your mood or your dopamine levels or your serotonin levels, because it's really a logical exercise. You start with what you have control over, and that's where you put your attention. And so you would put your attention into the exercise of learning how to think about your situation, the process of life that's flowing through you now, and the situation that you find yourself in as something good, okay? And let's see, so you're using your logic to focus your attention on your universe, I'm going to call it that. So I would say, for me, I'm going to teach myself to focus on lucky things and on gifts from the universe and on positive attributes of myself. So let's say that a negative view arises. We learn to transform it into a positive view by building a meta view and using our creative ability to construct this meta view. That is, we re-engineer our view of the world. We consciously re-engineer it. Now, you have to be creative. You have to do it in a way that works for you. If you think angels are stupid, then you can't really create an angelic being that's guiding you. That, like for me, I am a trained scientist, but before I went into engineering, I was really an artist. I was born painting. I was painting the walls of my nursery with found pencils and crayons when I was as little as, I don't know, my mother says I was like not even walking yet, so I was probably 1 year old. And I was drawing on the walls, first scribbles and then symbols and then pictures. And I never stopped until she made me wash it off with Mr. Clean. If any of you know what Mr. Clean is, that will burn the fingers of a little 2-year-old girl. It'll burn her fingers so bad that she'll never want to draw on the wall again. While I don't think that was a good method, I do know that it stopped me from drawing on the walls, and I'm wondering if it might have stopped me from becoming the artist I was meant to be. But be that as it may, I'm thankful for the memory and the knowledge that I was born as an artist. Why am I saying this? Because artists typically have a very creative mind, and we see multiple worlds. We don't just see the world that everyone else agrees exists. The mandatory world and the mundane world. We see other worlds, and we fantasize, and we create worlds too, we artists. And so if you have a little bit of that in you, it goes a long way to helping you reinterpret the universe as a glass half full. If you only exist in the mundane world of the news and the fashions and the trends of today, you have a very, very narrow and, in my opinion, boring world that is dictated by others. So that's the beauty of reading good books, because you can learn to escape that and train yourself to go into other worlds. Well, as we continue, let's begin our first exercise. We do it every morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. And as I described before, you pick 3 or 4 items that you're thankful for that happened that day and what you did to contribute to those things. And this goes a long way in making you feel better. And even if you do it and you don't necessarily feel better, honestly ask yourself a question. Did you go from -10 to -9, or -10 to 0, or -10 to +2, or -10 to +10? You know, like, and maybe, because +10 would be, you know, total bliss, and -10 would be total depression, where you don't want to live anymore. So you have that scale, and neutral would be a 0. So even if you can bring your -5 up to a neutral, that's a really good thing, because then your cortisol is not constantly rising. It stops it from rising and just kind of holds at the same level until your liver can get rid of it for you. Anyway, so this this philosophy of trying to raise your negative thoughts to 0, and you know, some of you might be like, as I was when I first was introduced to these ideas, is that, but if you're have a migraine, or if you just lost your job, or if you just lost a loved one, you know, just the worst thing, you can even think of worse things than that, how can you possibly go to neutral? You know, like, that's just impossible. But the reason I say that it is possible, that you can go to neutral or even a positive, is the concept of yin and yang. Now, in Chinese philosophy, their approach is explained by yin and yang, and applied to our conversation here. Every process or situation has a more yang aspect and a more yin aspect. So even if you're at the very bottom of hell, you could theoretically go even more into hell. So no matter what situation you're in, and the fire is burning and your skin is charred and you're in total pain, you could actually go worse, right? Because I'll just say, all the people you love could be thrown in that with you. Wouldn't that make it worse? And if they're already there, then maybe all the universe could be in. You know, you could always invent a way to make it worse. So that would be going one direction. And then the other direction, there's always something better. So if you've just won the lottery and you think you're the luckiest person on earth, maybe someone won 2 lotteries. Maybe someone won 10 lotteries, you know. Maybe someone got to go to heaven, you know. So there's always something worse and something better than what's happening to you. And that's sort of like a mathematical truth. And in mathematics, you could just express it in the language of mathematics by saying that every non-zero real number has a number larger than it and a number smaller than it. So, you know, nobody could dispute that. So it's just a logical fact, right? And then in metaphysics, in some religions, you could even say that if you want to try to find a reason why something bad happened and something to be thankful for, you can always say something like that it's a process that God gave you in order to learn from it, or improve from it, or face something. Like, sometimes I've heard Buddhist teachers say that we're here in this universe to experience everything, and you know, all the badness and all the goodness. And so if you're there to experience, and you're experiencing something really bad, well, think about it as it'll be over soon, and then you'll be done with it, right? Because you had to experience that. And when you do experience all levels of badness up to goodness, you learn from it, you grow from it spiritually, and you, quote, become enlightened. And if you don't experience pain, you'll never be able to have compassion for the pain that other people experience. And if you can't have compassion for the pain that other people experience, then you're not fully developed as a human being. Because we all want to be able to have empathy and compassion for our fellow, you know, cohabitants of this planet. So you can always find a way to rationalize that something bad is actually good for you. And it might not happen overnight. But, for example, one time I was living happily with 2 people and a pet, and I had a really good job. I didn't know it was a good job. I thought it was a terrible job because I was stressed. But when I lost that job, I realized how good it was, because it allowed me to buy a beautiful house and to support 2 people, myself, and a pet, and all live together in harmony. And that's not very common in this world, to live together in harmony on a beautiful, nature-filled, giant plot of land and a beautiful house, right? So first I lost one person. They moved. They had to move. And the other one moved to a different country. And then I lost the pet. And then after that I lost the job. Then I lost the house. And then I lost security, and I lost a future, and I just, one thing after another, and then my health, I'm laughing because, I don't want to dwell on it right now, but I'm just saying that for me, after it all happened, I searched and searched, because I had already taken the happiness class for why did this happen, and now I can look at every single facet of what happened and see that it was actually what I had been praying for, because that job was hurting me, for example, and the living situation was hurting me too, because it was draining me of resources, and it was causing me to become ill because I was working so hard just to have the house and the land and the family and the security. And I also had to experience the fear, the loss, the homelessness, the worry. I had to go through all that, and now I have sincere compassion for all of us who are going through the same thing. And without that having happened to me, I think I might have been a little bit more blind about life. But I would have been more naive and maybe less thankful for what I have. I mean, now I'm just like so thankful for a cup of tea, and that has helped me appreciate the little things in life. I shared my personal example that was sort of recent in the last few years. And so, again, you may not be able to think of a positive reason why something happened right away. And maybe if that happens to you and you're stuck, you could think about your past and go back there after time has passed and you're already over a situation. And be thankful for those things that have happened, because maybe in retrospect you can find a reason why that happened. And for me, I always rely on a spiritual reason. And like I said, again, this may not work for you. You may be more logical, but for me, the spiritual reason is kind of brings an element of magic and mystery into it. And what's life without mystery? It would be boring. And so sometimes I have imaginary conversations with my spirit guide, but who's to say they're imaginary? They could be real. I use the word imaginary to a person stuck in the mundane world so that they won't judge me too harshly. But to me, it's just as real as the real world. The only difference is that I know the real world is more unchanging and agreed upon. So I'm not going to always reveal my inner fantasies or my inner realities to the real world, because I don't want to be thought of as, different or non-scientific. But I'm just saying here today that it's actually, in my mind, quite scientific to invent or sense or know that my angelic spirit guide is right here is one and right here is another, and I can ask them any question I want, and they're always there to offer love and support and advice. And if I have any question to ask the universe, I write it, "Dear Guardian Angel," and then I ask the question. And I tell you, it always happens that the answer comes right away. I started by writing the question with my right hand and the answer with my left hand, because I can write backwards with my left hand, because it's real easy. Like Carol would be Carol, C-A-R, and then I'll come back over here, O-L, that's Carol. And it's real easy to write backwards with your left hand if you just imagine your right hand and do the opposite. See, like that? It's harder to do this, but it's easy to do this because it's symmetrical. And so I learned to write with my left hand, and that seems like the voice started to come out there. Then I started to have a broken wrist, and so I changed it to the right hand, and it still works. So I guess I trained myself to channel that voice. And so that's how I get most of my answers when I ask. But everybody probably has their own method. Other ways I get answers, and this is sort of part of happiness psychology, because I found that it works for me. It gets me answers that I have otherwise no access to. I ask the universe, which I'm a part of, to hear my question, and I fervently obsess over the question for like a whole minute. And I know there's an answer. I believe there's an answer. I know there's an answer. And I'm asking, please, I'm willing to hear the answer, and I know you will send it to me. And thank you so much, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just imagine that the ideas are going to come to me. And either right then they come, or in the next 24 to 48 hours, I'll just be driving along or doing my errands or something, and all of a sudden I'll see something. And then I'll see something else, and I'll see something else, and they all have these coincidental connections, and then I'll start getting answers. And maybe another day I'll make a video of some coincidences, quote, coincidences that happen to me, to show you how I do this. Maybe you can develop your skills to do it too. It's a really good way to get answers. Well, so I'll close by saying that remember, if you want to see the glass as half full and raise your set point of happiness, at the end of your day, and even more often, think of 3 things that you caused that were good. 3 good things that happened today. And what did you do to cause it? So, I hope this has been helpful. And if you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe. Peace, everybody.